Alright, so now we're going to solve equations with fractions or decimals. My recommendation, get that calculator handy. Alright, so for this problem, again, we're going to go back to where we were talking yesterday or the day before about this being a variable term, this being a constant term, and this being a constant term. And we're going to collect our constants together on one side. We're going to leave our variable term alone, and so I'm going to move this 1/3 from the left side to the right side. So I'm going to add 1/3 there, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to add 1/3 there. That created 0, and that goes away. So I'm left on the left-hand side with 1/6 y is equal to, and whenever you add 5/6 plus 1/3, you get 7/6, or if your calculator said 1 1/6, that's great. I like improper fractions better, so anyways, I'm going to leave that as an improper fraction. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do the next step. You can either multiply both sides by 6, or you can divide both sides by 1/6. I don't really care. You're doing the same thing. I think that multiplying by 6 on both sides is easier if you're not using a calculator. And there's our answer. So now if you want to check your work, you could take that 7 and you can put it where you see y. So I'm going to use a different color. Here we go. So 1/6 times 7 minus 1/3, does that equal 5/6? And again, so I would grab the calculator and start typing things in. So 1/6 times 7 minus 1/3, and I get 5/6. And because those two things are equal, I know that this is my correct answer. Alright, so for this one, again, we've got variable term, variable term, variable term, constant term, and so all of our variable terms are already collected on one side of the equal sign. So on my calculator, I am typing in 1/2 plus 2/5 minus 3/4. Notice I didn't say the v's on any of those. I'm just adding my coefficients or subtracting my coefficients. So on the left-hand side, that didn't change. I'm left with 6. And on the right-hand side, I've got 3/20 v. Okay, so now to solve for v, we're going to divide both sides by 3/20. On my calculator, here's what I'm typing in. I'm typing in 6 divided by 3/20. And I hit enter and I get an answer of 40. Okay, so now to check the work, I would do 6 is hopefully equal to 1/2 of 40 plus 2/5 of 40 minus 3/4 of 40. And this one, because all of these denominators go into 40 evenly, this one's actually pretty easy to do without a calculator. So 2 will go into 40 20 times, and so I got 20 there. 5 will go into 40 8 times. I've got to multiply 2 times 8, which is 16. And then 4 will go into 40 10 times. -3 times 10 is -30. So let's see here. 20 plus 16, that's 36. And so I get that 6 is equal to 6. So I know that is my correct answer. Alright, so for this problem, we've got a variable term here, we've got a constant term right here, we've got a variable term here, and we've got a constant term right here. Again, I usually pull my smaller variable term to my larger one, and 3/8 is smaller than 1, so I'm going to subtract 3/8 a from both sides. And this a is the same thing as having 8/8 right there in front of it. So I'm left with 5/8 a plus 3/4 is equal to, don't forget this sign right here, negative 1/2. Okay, so now I want to subtract 3/4 from both sides. And I get 5/8 is equal to negative 1 1/4, or you could say negative 5/4. And then divide both sides by 5/8. And so here, I'm going to finish this up here. So A is equal to negative 2. All right, so to check my answer, to check my work, I'm going to go over here to the left side. So I've got negative 2 plus 3/4. Is that equal to 3/8 times negative 2 minus 1/2? So on my calculator, I'm typing in negative 2 plus 3/4, and I get negative 5/4. And on the right-hand side, I'm going to type in 3/8 times negative 2 minus 1/2, and I get negative 2/11. Sorry, losing my mind. I typed something in wrong, but I wind up getting negative 5/4 anyway. All right, so negative 5/4 equals negative 5/4. I know that that is correct. All right, so on this problem right here, we need to get rid of that parenthesis. So we need to distribute 1/4 to everything inside the parenthesis. So I've got negative 5 on the left. 1/4 times 8x is 2x, and 1/4 times 4 is 1. So now I just subtract the 1. Negative 6 is equal to 2x, and now I'm going to divide by 2. Okay, so now to check the work, we would do negative 5, is that equal to 1/4 times 8 times negative 3 plus 4. Okay, so negative 24 plus 4 is negative 20. And then negative 5 is equal to 1/4 times negative 20 is negative 5. So that works. This is my answer. Alright, on this problem you have to distribute twice. So we're going to distribute 1/2 to those terms and 1/4 to those two terms. So 1/2 times y is 1/2 y. 1/2 times a negative 5 is negative 5 halves. 1/4 times y is 1/4 y, and 1/4 times negative 1 is negative 1/4. So now, keep in mind, we are left with variable term, constant term, variable term, constant term. So I want to collect my variable terms on one side, and I want to collect my constant terms on the other. And 1/4 is smaller than 1/2, so I'm going to subtract 1/4 y from both sides. And 1/2 minus 1/4 is 1/4. Oops, don't forget your y. I'm going to bring this straight down, so minus 5/2 is equal to negative 1/4, because remember that created 0. Now I want to add 5/2 to both sides. So on your calculator, type in negative 1/4 plus 5/2, and you get 9/4. And now from here on out, you can either do one of two things. You can multiply both sides by 4 or divide both sides by 1/4. They do the same thing. So if I multiply both sides by 4, those guys cancel. So do those. I'm left with 9. And so to check my work, let's go over here to the left-hand side again. So I've got 1/2 times 9 minus 5. Does that equal 1/4 times 9 minus 1? 9 minus 5 is 4. Half of 4 is 2. 9 minus 1 is 8. 1/4 of 8 is 2. So look at that. This does work. This is our answer. Okay, so for this problem, there are a lot of ways to do this problem. I'm going to show you probably the way that comes to my mind the quickest. And whenever you have the entire left side being divided by something and you have the entire right side being divided by something, I feel like the easiest way to solve this is to solve it the way we would solve a proportion. Cross multiply. So you're left with 2 times 5x minus 3, and your right side is going to be 4 times x. Now this actually doesn't look nearly as bad as it did before. Those fractions just made it look kind of messy. So now you want to distribute. 2 times 5x is 10x. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. I want to collect my variables on the same side. This is one of the few times that I will not move my smaller variable. And the reason I won't do that is because I would then have my variable term and my constant term on the same side of the equal sign. And that doesn't help us out. So this is one of the few that I will actually move my larger one just to get it away from that constant term. So I'm left with negative 6 on the left. 4x minus 10x is negative 6x. And now I'm going to divide both sides by negative 6. So I get that x is equal to 1. Alright, so let's check our work. And I'm going to put 1 in everywhere I see x and see if it makes a true statement. Okay, so 5 times 1 is 5. 5 minus 3 is 2. And whenever I reduce 2/4, I do get 1/2. And those guys are equal to each other, so that is my answer. Alright, so for this problem, there are many ways to do this problem correctly as well. And the way that I probably would do this is I may multiply by the common denominator. So keep in mind this is over 1 and this is over 1. So what is the lowest common denominator for 6, 1, and 4? It's 12. So I'm going to distribute 12 to each and every term in this. And the reason why I'm doing that is because whenever you distribute your lowest common denominator, you get rid of your fractions altogether. The fractions go away. So whenever and I'm going to do this the long way. So 12 times a over 6 plus 12 times 2 equals 12 times a over, that's the a, that doesn't look like an a over 4 plus 12 times 3. So each and every term is getting multiplied by 12. And watch what happens. So 2 times a is 2a. 12 times 2 is 24. 4 will go into 12 3 times. 3 times a is 3a. And 12 times 3 is 36. So my fractions all went away, and this actually looks like a much kinder problem to us. So I would now take my smaller variable term and move it to the larger one. So I've got 24 is equal to a plus 36. And now I'm going to subtract 36 from both sides. 24 minus 36 is negative 12. And so now to check your work, okay, so now I'm going to put negative 12 everywhere I see a in my original problem. So I've got negative 12 over 6 plus 2. Does that equal negative 12 over 4 plus 3? And I get 0 on the left and 0 on the right. So yep, that works. Okay, again, this is one of those problems that it would probably be easiest to multiply by the lowest common denominator. And between 2, 1, and 4, our lowest common denominator is 4. So I'm going to multiply 4 times 4q plus 3 over 2 plus 4 times 6 equals 4 times 3q plus 5 over 4. Okay, so watch what happens. So right here, 2 will go into 4 twice, so I wind up with 2 times 4q plus 3 plus 4 times 6 is 24. Check this out. The 4's cancel, so I'm left with 3q plus 5. Now I need to distribute. So I have 8q plus 6 plus 24 on the left and 3q plus 5 on the right. And now I need to combine my like terms. I've got 8q plus 30 equals 3q plus 5. Now I'm going to move my 3q to the left. So I'm left with 5q plus 30 equals 5. Subtract 30. I'm going to have to finish this up here. So I've got 5q equals negative 25. Divide by 5. Q is equal to negative 5. Alright, so I got that q was equal to negative 5. So let's test this out. Go back to your original problem and put negative 5 in everywhere you see q. Okay, so 4 times negative 5 is negative 20, plus 3 is negative 17 over 2. 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. Negative 15 plus 5 is negative 10. On my calculator, I'm typing in negative 17 halves plus 6, and I get negative 5 halves. And when I reduce the negative 10 fourths, I get negative 5 halves. So that works. So I know that this is my answer. Alright, so now we've got some decimals in here, and that's okay. You still solve these the same way. Here's your variable term, here's your constant, here's your variable, here's your constant. So again, the goal, get your variables collected on one side of the equal sign, get your constants collected on the other. So I would move this one because it's the smallest. And 0.25 minus 0.06 is 0.19x. And now I would add 1.5 to both sides. So I get 1.52 is equal to 0.19x. Divide both sides by 0.19. And I get 8. Alright, so now test it. See if it works. So I'm going to put 8 in wherever I see x. So 0.06 times 8 plus 0.02. Does that equal 0.25 times 8 minus 1.5? Again, this is just a calculator issue. 0.06 times 8 plus 0.02, and I get 0.5. Whenever I do the right hand side, 0.25 times 8 minus 1.5, and I get 0.5 there. So those are equal, so I know this is my correct answer. Alright, last example. So what you want to do here is you want to distribute to get rid of your parentheses. So this just gets brought down. 0.05 times x is 0.05x. 0.05 times 3 is 0.15. Now I want to combine my like terms, which are there and there. And I'm going to subtract this from both sides. And divide both sides by 0.3. Okay, so now let's test it. And I'm just going to type in the entire left-hand side on my calculator. So 0.25 times 9 plus 0.05 times 9 plus 3. I get 2.85 on the left. Those are equal, so that's our answer. Alright, so these problems for this section are lengthy. Use plenty of paper, give yourself space and things to space to work. If you try to squish everything on the homework page that I gave you, it's not going to work out. You're never going to be able to keep up with where you're at. So just use paper and be very neat and clean about every step. And if you have any questions, send me a message.